The longer that I'm here, the more I think about, or rather find out about, a lot of the background things that go on here in Japan. I mean, not necessarily with Japanese people, but with foreigners in Japan. When I was in the military, when we were, stationed in countries that weren't our own, we had a lot of acronyms for people. Usually it was like LN, which is local national, or FN, foreign national, TCN, third country national. That word third country is not really used anymore. It's developing countries. But whatever label it is, we labeled everyone. And what I noticed, or rather a current trending topic in the foreign community, is what they call themselves. And there's this idea about, expat and digital nomad and international business person, globalist, immigrants, really is the term. And I think a few years back I was featured on Asian Boss, and there was a lot of talk about, what's the difference between an expat and what's the difference between an immigrant. And back then I didn't really have an answer to that question. But the more I think about it, the more annoyed I get. And I think recently it's become really a trending topic because Japan has identified, or rather, the LDP, a wing of the Japanese government, has identified that they are going to target permanent residents who have not been paying their taxes to revoke their permanent resident status, which has had a chilling effect on many of the permanent residents who up to this point have paid their taxes, have done everything they're supposed to do because they couldn't get their permanent residence otherwise. So what's the problem? The problem is, and as per usual, the minority is targeted because they are the most obvious target. It's easiest to target someone who doesn't look like, sound like, or like everyone else. And so these people who had to prove the fact that they are trustworthy, the fact that they have a job, that they have financial security, they're getting targeted as the reason why Japan is having a shortfall, or will have future shortfalls in their pension funds, for example. Belying the fact that the reason why the pension fund is not going to work out very well is because you're robbing the youth to pay the old, and the youth aren't recycling themselves because you decided not to have kids, and now you're reaping what you sow, and you need foreign residents to pay the taxes so that you could retire, and you're not going to have a next generation to actually pay that again. So I don't know what's going to happen when I retire, but I'll be cool. I have a pension otherwise. But this has really inflamed the foreign community, and not just the foreign community that's here. It really pitted people who are, how can I say, foreign nationalists in Japan and foreign realists in Japan. And maybe I should define that. Foreign nationalists, foreigner who is a Japanese nationalist, meaning everything that Japan does is right, nothing that Japan does is wrong, and any ideas that you have about changing Japan, well, that should be met as an existential threat to Japan. And then there's the foreign realist. Now, I don't want you to think of realists as in me saying they're pragmatic. The realists just see everything on a scale, and life is not on a scale, so both of these parties are not necessarily doing themselves any favors or perfect actors or perfect narrators. Each of them is a flawed narrator. Because the realist thinks that, well, it's not fair for you to view things this way. You shouldn't say these things. You shouldn't do these things. Why are you doing them? Well, they're doing them because they're human, and humans do that. This is what humans do. And so you have these people arguing with each other. Now, this would be nothing, really, except for the fact now you have people who don't live in Japan chiming in about what Japan should do because they love Japan so much from the outside. I mean, there is, I guess, a thriving community of people outside of Japan that view Japan as kind of like this perfect place. And then if you are one of those people, educate yourselves with one of the videos that I've posted up here. Japan is not perfect. But from the outside, any idea that could threaten the view that people have of Japan is, again, an existential threat to Japan, to those people. So now you have us going around and around and around about, well, what is a foreigner's place in Japan? And now let's go back to me. What do I think a foreigner's place in Japan is? Well, what is anyone's place anywhere? Live, contribute, help, educate, proliferate good ideas, then die. That's your job pretty much everywhere. Your country, someone else's country, whether you can vote or not. Live, help, pay, die. Who cares what you're called? Everywhere you go, you live, you help, you pay, and you die. And I don't understand necessarily why this is a thing. And maybe it's because, like, in my elderly age of 37, I don't really have the patience to have these arguments anymore. I don't have the patience to entertain the idea that Japan is perfect. I don't have the patience to entertain the idea that Japan's imperfections can be solved by those that look like me or who don't look like Japanese people, when Japanese people aren't interested in solving their problems. I'm just going to live, pay, help, and eventually I'm going to die. But along the way, I'm going to tell these stories. Now, why? Why tell this story, Ty? There's no point. Sorry, my internal dialogue calls me Ty because that's my nickname. Why do I have these conversations? Why am I making this video after so long? Why this video? Because generally speaking, the story that everyone is living through is made more complicated by the labels that we have for ourselves, or the labels that we give other people. We worry so much about what things are called and what group people are in, and we worry less about the actual practical aspects of life. Yes, this policy of targeting foreign people for revocation of their permanent residency status highlights the fact that permanent residency status doesn't really mean anything in Japan, and if you thought it did, look at coronavirus when permanent residents weren't allowed back in Japan. Yes, we understand. It's not fair. Can you do anything about it? Nah, you can't. Sorry. You can't do anything about it. Does that mean you should shut up about it? No, not necessarily. And to the people on the outside, yeah, Japan's imperfect. So is your country. And yours. And you in the back, yours too. Everyone's country is imperfect. And calling out the imperfections of a country is not threatening that country. It's trying to make that country better. Now, will everyone listen? No. But if one person listens, that's a pretty good thing. And we should continue to want people to call things out, because a problem anywhere is a problem everywhere. We're not so isolated anymore. And I think that's pretty much obvious since this entire dialogue erupted from Twitter. I refuse to call it the other name. It's Twitter. And the eruption of this idea is a debate from people all over the world. So again, a problem anywhere is a problem everywhere. But everywhere you go, there you are. And what are you doing there? Living, helping, paying, and dying. We're going to have more of these conversations because we're going back to an old style of my channel. There'll be diaries, but there'll be these conversations as well. I'm Dante. This is Dante Dakata. Until next time. Later.